Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and I have another update for y'all. The Washington Commanders have signed safety Steven Parker. Of course, we got to break down his history. Is he going to be a solution, or is he just depth? Will he just end up on the practice squad, or is there a chance that he actually makes a 53-man roster and has an impact for this team on the regular season and hopefully the postseason? There were also a lot of other moves made, including Steven Parker. There were 3 players signed, 3 players released, and sadly, another player waived with an injury designation. My boy Jequez Ezzard, who I was really rooting for. I'm sad about it, but of course we got to dive into everything going on with Steven Parker and all of the guys that got signed and cut, and look at why we brought some guys on and why we let some guys go, including some Pro Football Focus grades for Steven Parker. And then we're gonna move on to an updated depth chart for the Washington Commanders 90-man roster right now. We're gonna go position group by position group and everything. Shouts out to Hogs Haven for providing the visual chart that we're gonna use, and I'm excited. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure y'all pull up to the Friday stream every Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. talking about everything, not even just sports. And then also wasn't able to do the Sunday stream this past Sunday. I moved it to Tuesday, so make sure y'all pull up Tuesday at 6 p.m. and after that on every Sunday at 6 p.m. And without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so let's start from the very beginning. Yesterday, as in Sunday, August 7th, the Washington Commanders signed linebacker Nathan Gerry, who I already did a video on, safety Steven Parker, who's going to be the main part of this video, the person that we spotlight the most, and then also tight end Eli Wolf. And y'all know I've been complaining about the Washington Commanders not picking up enough Georgia guys. The last guy we had on our team that was a Georgia guy was Thomas Davis, and before that, I couldn't even tell you. But sadly, Eli Wolf was not what I meant by bringing in a guy from Georgia. The University of Georgia is what I mean, not just the state. There's a lot of players on this team that are from Georgia, from Atlanta metro area. Steven Montez, Jamin Davis, Antonio Gibson, Jequez Ezzard, who we're about to get to sadly. There's a few guys, but University of Georgia wise, Eli Wolf was not what I asked for. I'm not gonna lie, even though I'm glad that he's getting the opportunity. And then we released quarterback Cole Kelley, which says a lot about how good Sam Howell looks so far in his development. It's never been a question of talent. He has the arm, he has the mobility, everything. Literally, the only thing that he's lacking physically is a little bit of height, but he can work around that, honestly. But mentally, learning the plays, being able to progress through your reads, going from an air raid system and mostly shotgun to having to sit under center and do play action and rollouts and bootlegs and things like that, and learning how to determine things pre-snap and making audibles and changing protections at the line of scrimmage, and then being more accurate because now you're going against better corners at the NFL than you were when you were at North Carolina. So it's like a lot of mental technique, nuance stuff that he has to get down. A lot of mechanics things. And again, I'm gonna keep saying it, I don't believe he's ready to necessarily start an NFL game yet, but he's definitely further ahead in the development and all of those things that I just listed than I even thought he would be, and probably even the Commanders. And I feel like after what he did at the FedEx Field, and I'm still working on that video, I just haven't had time again. I was busy all Sunday. I'm recording this right now at 1:30 a.m. So I'm still working on a complete breakdown of day 10 of training camp from the FedEx Field practice. We're going to talk about the highs and the lows of every position group, every player, all that type of stuff. So make sure y'all on the lookout for that. But what I meant is Sam Howell performed so well there that I think that played a big reason into why they were like, all right, we don't need Cole Kelley anymore. We can use that roster spot for something else. Plus, Cole Kelley was a long shot anyway. I never thought he looked good anyway. He was basically just another Steven Montez. So it was kind of expected, but it happened way sooner than I expected. I mean, Cole Kelley didn't even make it to the preseason. Sam Howell looked so good that they were like, we don't even need to see Cole Kelley in the preseason. We got our 3 quarterbacks, and we can work on using those roster spots for other positions, especially like tight end and offensive line, where we have so many injuries right now. And even just this linebacker group that's still a big mystery. Of course, Taylor Heinicke is firmly your second quarterback, but Sam Howell's competing, and he clearly took that third spot again by the release of Cole Kelley. That signals that he completely dominated that. We'll see if he can beat out Taylor Heinicke at some point this season. He's definitely more physically gifted and talented than a Taylor Heinicke, but again, it's a lot of the mental stuff. And then lastly, they also waived for an injury designation my boy wide receiver Jequez Ezzard from Atlanta. I was rooting for him. I was hoping he would be another Steven Sims for us and at the very least make the team as like a punt returner, an electric punt returner, but he got hurt and now he's pretty much just about to be on that list. If nobody picks him up, he'll just probably sit on the injured reserve for us. We'll see. And then I'm hoping I can get a good look at him maybe next year or something. I don't know. And they also cut linebacker Bryce Notree, which I'm surprised about because Ron Rivera has spoken quite highly of him. I'm surprised they cut him before they cut some of the other linebackers. And I'm also surprised they cut a linebacker, even though we just signed one in Nathan Gerry. We still lost two of them, one with a torn ACL, one retired, and he came back. But I mean, like I already said in the last video, him retiring and then unretiring does not make me feel any better about his chances of making this roster and how much he really cares about football. You know what I'm saying? So I'm definitely afraid of that linebacker depth on the deep end of the roster. And then also they cut Tyrese Robinson, the offensive lineman. Again, Bryce Notree's a little weird, a little interesting because Ron Rivera did speak highly of him. He was one of the guys that Ron Rivera would specifically point out. And then going back to tight end Eli Wolf that we signed, he's 6'4", 238 pounds. He started at Tennessee, transferred to Georgia, and I mean, he was decent, but like, I can see why he entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent. He was not drafted. The Ravens picked him up in 2020. He spent his rookie season on the practice squad and injured reserve, and then he spent the 2021 season on the Colts practice squad. And then earlier this season, he was with the Packers for OTAs and mini camps. Then they cut him, and then now we just picked him up. But just to let you know, Eli Wolf has never played a snap in a regular season game in the NFL. And it's crazy too because Georgia's becoming tight end U. So don't look at Eli Wolf as like one of them guys like a Brock Bowers and a Reek Gilbert or a Darnell Washington or even the freshman Oscar Delp. Love Eli Wolf. Appreciate anybody that came and played for Georgia, but do not expect him to be anything more than depth right now with all the injuries that we're dealing with. Logan Thomas on PUP. John Bates dealing with an injury. He's missed a few practices. Cole Turner now has the hamstring issue. He missed the FedEx Field practice and left early to practice before that on Friday. And then Samus Reyes is also dealing with a hamstring issue. So right now, Curtis Hodges is your tight end 1 and Armani Rogers is literally tight end 2. That is crazy. They just need bodies out there at this point. Definitely don't want to risk bringing Cole Turner back too fast. Definitely take your time. Be overly cautious. Bring him back too late rather than too early, please. We've already seen what he can do. I don't think he needs the reps that bad. Of course, he's a rookie, 5th round rookie. We want him to get as many reps as possible in his rookie season, especially his first off season in his NFL career. But we've seen what he can do. Do not rush him back too fast. Please hydrate, whatever it takes, stretch, fix it. And then the man of the hour, the guy that we're going to take the deepest look on. Remember, Washington signed safety Steven Parker. And his most notable season since being drafted in 2018 was his 2019 season with the Dolphins, where he flashed in 14 games and 4 starts. So I think at the very least he could end up making the roster like as a deep depth safety, or really at the very least like a practice squad guy. 6'1", 210 pounds, just like Eli Wolf, an undrafted free agent, but he was picked up in 2018 by the Rams instead. And this guy was like Mr. Oklahoma, like the state of Oklahoma's best athlete when coming out of high school. So it's kind of crazy that at this early in his NFL career, people aren't fighting to get him. Coming out of high school, people thought he would be like one of them guys. He was playing, I believe, receiver and safety at the same time. Like he was one of those. And after being picked up by the Rams as an undrafted free agent, he spent the entire rookie season on the practice squad. And then in 2019, he somehow made the Dolphins 53-man roster, really worked his tail off, and again, played in 14 games, started 4 of them, and he flashed. He wasn't very consistent, but you saw some potential there. You saw some Oklahoma State's best athlete at times. But then he was waived by the Dolphins at the end of their training camp in 2020. Then he was very briefly with the Vikings. And then he ended up in Dallas, where he was just going in between the practice squad and the roster, practice squad, roster, whenever they needed him to just simply be available just in case. And he only played in 7 games and only played 79 defensive snaps. And then his most recent season was with the Giants last season, where he only appeared in 3 games and only played 24 defensive snaps. So it's really interesting that, I mean, he went from the Cowboys to the Giants to now us. That's 3 straight NFC East teams. And I'm definitely assuming that he's hoping that this can be the one that he calls home and truly make an impact. And so I'm not going to really dive into all of his Pro Football Focus grades from every year because none of them are really notable like that. 2019, again, was clearly his best season. It was the season that he played the most games in. The only season that he's ever started in games, he started in 4 for the Dolphins. So we're going to look at that one. That year, he had 15 solo tackles, 2 interceptions, 10 targets, and 7 receptions allowed. And then he had a 63.5 overall grade. His run defense was a 68.4, which is pretty good. And then his pass rush grade was a 56.6, which I don't expect to be great. And then a 62.4 coverage grade, which you'd hope be better than that. But those aren't the grades of a guy that can barely make a practice squad. So that's really interesting. And I don't know if we signed him because of his Pro Football Focus grades, but I mean, based off of what I saw him do for the little bit that he flashed for the Dolphins, I'm hoping that's what we brought him in for, and I'm hoping that we can coach him up to do that more consistently. And at the very least, if there's an injury, he's a guy that we can depend on to step in as like a end of the depth chart type of guy. Maybe I don't expect him to have even as much of an impact as recently signed linebacker Nathan Gerry. I think Nathan Gerry, even regardless of the guys ahead of him, because of course Kendall Fuller, William Jackson, and Benjamin St-Juste are a better starting corner trio than we have in Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb at linebacker. So it's obvious that whoever signed to be behind those guys, the guy that's the linebacker is the guy that will more than likely have a larger impact than the other guy, obviously. But in even ignoring who's above them on the depth chart, I just think Nathan Gerry has the potential to have a larger impact on this team, especially sooner than a Steven Parker. But we'll see. Again, he flashed with the Dolphins, so you can maybe argue that he has a higher ceiling than a Nathan Gerry, but Nathan Gerry is definitely the safer player and definitely the guy I can see making the 53-man roster, whereas Steven Parker, I think he may end up on the practice squad, but I mean, maybe he balls out and actually makes a 53-man roster. And before we dive into the depth chart, just to let you know, we are currently at 90 players, but because of David Bada, with him being part of the International Player Pathway Program, we're allowed to have an extra roster spot, which is technically 91. So I'm not exactly sure if they just feel like, you know what, the first roster cut comes up soon, Tuesday, August 16th. So we might as well just go ahead and wait till then because we're going to have to cut it down to 86 anyway. Or if they're just still looking to sign a guy, and maybe by Monday or Tuesday, we would have brought somebody else in before that roster cut happens again, Tuesday, August 16th. But we may not add somebody. We may just hold on to that 90 till we got to go down to 86. And we do have our first preseason game before that cut. His first preseason game, cut to 86, second preseason game, cut to 81, third preseason game, and then we're down to the 53-man roster. And now let's dive into this depth chart, man, starting with the offense. I mean, your obvious tackles, Charles Leno and Samuel Cosmi are your starters. Cornelius Lucas, still not exactly sure what's going on there. I haven't seen him practice yet in training camp, but he's your backup swing tackle. And then after that, it's pretty ugly. Rashad Hill, Aaron Montero, Alex Aking-Bulu. Honestly, I'm higher on Sadiq Charles being a tackle than those guys so far, but we'll see. Maybe that changes throughout training camp and one of those guys surprises us. And then the rest of the offensive line, guard, Andrew Norwell, Chase Roulier, and Trey Turner are your projected starters. Chase Roulier is a safe starter. And then your backup swing guard, basically the Cornelius Lucas equivalent for the interior of the offensive line. Not even just guard, but even your backup center is Wes Schweitzer. Because I could argue Wes Schweitzer is a better center than Tyler Larson, but technically Tyler Larson is your backup center because Wes Schweitzer is so good at either of the interior offensive line spots. You prefer for him to start in place of like an Andrew Norwell or a Trey Turner if an injury happens there. And then if for some reason Chase Roulier is hurt, Tyler Larson starts at center. And then Sadiq Charles showed some flashes last year, so still not where I thought he would be from the time we drafted him, but I don't think he's as bad as a lot of people think. And then Chris Paul has been balling out so far in the offseason. I definitely see him making this roster and possibly even passing Sadiq Charles on the depth chart by the time the regular season starts. I still think Sadiq Charles makes the team, obviously the 53-man roster, but Chris Paul may technically be above him by the time the season starts. We'll see about Keith Ishmael at center. I don't know if he makes a team. John Tall, doubt he makes a team. Deion Calhoun, Nolan Laufenberg, Willie Bevers. We'll see if any of those guys make the team, but I don't think so. Then you go to tight end. We have so many of them because of so many injuries. I mean, we're probably only going to go into the season with 3, which you would assume would be Logan Thomas, John Bates, Cole Turner, and then after that, probably Sammis Reyes, maybe Curtis Hodges, Armani Rogers, Eli Wolf. But then again, if Logan Thomas is still on the PUP list to start the season, maybe it changes. You have John Bates, Cole Turner, and then maybe you can keep Curtis Hodges and Sammis Reyes, or somehow include Armani Rogers. Y'all know I'm heavily rooting for Armani Rogers, but I'm not sure if he's there yet, and maybe we can store him away on the practice squad. We'll see, because right now Curtis Hodges has been making plays. Remember, rookie mini camps, Curtis Hodges was reportedly flashing even more than Cole Turner, and Cole Turner's been balling throughout training camp. John Bates is already one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. Sammis Reyes is right there with him in blocking, and then now he's starting to show a little bit of receiving potential, and he's not bobbling passes like he did in that one preseason game last year. He's starting to become a more natural catcher. So this is a really tight group right here. Eli Wolf, again, really is only here as just like a camp body. For the most part, we just need guys available. As of right now, the only guys that are healthy in our tight end room going into this practice on Monday are literally Curtis Hodges, Armani Rogers, and Eli Wolf. That's it. Those are the three guys that have never played NFL regular season football, and 2 of them we just brought in as undrafted free agents this year. Even though Curtis Hodges, I think he's safe. Like, if we had to go to him in this Jaguars game for any reason, if everybody above him is injured, I think we'd be fine. It wouldn't be ideal, but he's already showing a little something. He's improving as a blocker, and you can't cover 6'8", especially with a guy with hands like him, and he's faster than you think at 6'8". He moves like he's like 6'2", 6'3", so that's just a mismatch waiting to happen. And then we'll see about Armani Rogers by the time the NFL season starts, if he even makes a team. But y'all already know, man, to me, he has like one of the highest ceilings on the team, regardless of position, so I really hope we can just be patient and give him like maybe 2 years, and then maybe you have a Darren Waller type of guy on your team. I mean, I'm that high on him. Then of course, quarterback Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell. Simple. Then running back Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, and it gets interesting after that, because of course you have JD McKissick as your third down back, so technically that's your 3 running backs. Are we going to keep 4? And honestly, going into this training camp, I thought Jonathan Williams may actually be above Jared Patterson just based off of what we saw last year. Jonathan Williams looked really good. But so far in training camp, Jared Patterson has definitely been outplaying Jonathan Williams, and I've started to see Jared Patterson get a little bit of kickoff return snaps in practice as well. So I think it's safe to say that Jared Patterson would make the team over Jonathan Williams. Plus, you can probably stash Jonathan Williams on the practice squad like we've already done, and no other team pick him up. And then wide receiver wise gets a little fun. You have Terry McLaurin as your X, John Dotson is your starting slot, and I guess Curtis Samuel is your starting Z. And then after that, it gets pretty competitive. Cam Sims, I think, is pretty safe to make the roster. De'Ami Brown's definitely safe to make the roster. Honestly, it's Terry McLaurin, John Dotson, Curtis Samuel as your starters. I think De'Ami Brown's 4th, and Cam Sims is probably 5th. And then after that, how many are we keeping? 6 or 7? Kyrick McGowan's been making plays. Markin Michelle has been making a lot of plays. Mini camps, training camps at FedEx Field had 2 great touchdowns. That man is making plays. I don't know why we're not at least trying to see what he can do in special teams as a returner, because with him being able to make plays like this on offense, it's still going to be hard for him to make the team if he can't contribute on special teams, because one of these last slots, whether we keep 6 or 7, somebody's got to be a returner. And so that's a competition between Alex Erickson, Dax Milne, and Kyrick McGowan for sure right now. And then you still have Kelvin Harmon, who's actually been shining a little bit, making plays as well, but I don't think he's going to make the team. Even as much as I like him, I don't think he's making the team. And before we go to the defense, of course, Tressway, Joey Sly, and Cameron Cheeseman are your 3 special teams guys. Then defense gets a little weird, because of course Chase Young is still on the PUP list. Your starting defensive line is technically James Smith-Williams in place of Chase Young, but he's hurt too. So Casey Toohill has been starting opposite of Montez Sweat. Speaking of Montez Sweat, the rest of your starting defensive line is Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, and again, Casey Toohill in place of Chase Young until James Smith-Williams gets healthy, until Chase Young gets healthy. Then behind them, you have Boomy Rotimi, William Bradley King, Jacob Ponajuwik, Shaka Toney. I'm a big fan of Shaka Toney. I'm going to keep beating the table about the fact that we need to try to move him to Sam linebacker and allow him to cover. I see Anthony Barr with more athleticism type of potential there, man. I'm telling you. And then the crazy Ben, situational pass rusher when we just really need a sack, he's your guy. He was making plays last year when a lot of the guys were hurt, even in the run game. And you can't forget F.A. Obata. I mean, he's the guy that we literally brought in as a free agent. Like, he's one of our very few free agent signings from other teams that we made this year. Of course, he's a former Carolina Panther, but he's one of those high ceiling guys that's just raw, and if he can put it all together, he's explosive, man. He's one of those guys that flashes. If you go look at his Bills tape, he flashed at times. And then behind Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, of course, Phidarian Mathis is like the clear-cut third guy, easily. And if we go into a 5 defensive lineman set, which I think we're actually going to do a lot this year, probably even more than we did the previous 2 years, it's going to be Chase Young, Daron Payne, Phidarian Mathis in the middle, Jonathan Allen, and then Montez Sweat. That will be your 5 defensive linemen, ideally when everybody's healthy. After that, you have Daniel Wise, who I think would probably be after Phidarian Mathis on the depth chart. And then it's competition between David Bada, Tyler Clark, and Justin Hamilton, who can make the team. Because you got to remember, James Smith-Williams, who they basically view as the direct backup to Chase Young, can also play interior defensive line. And that's just a really useful utility to have, a nice positional flex guy, because now you can be more flexible in roster spots that you keep open. With all of these tight end issues we have, with all of the injuries and stuff, maybe James Smith-Williams allows you to keep one less defensive lineman and one more tight end. Then linebacker-wise, obviously, Jamin Davis and Cole Holcomb should be your starters, but David Mayo's been getting more reps with the ones this past week in certain days, so I don't know what's going on. But thank goodness Jamin Davis had a really good, arguably his best practice since we've drafted him type of practice on Friday right before the FedEx Field event. So hopefully that was enough to convince the coaching staff to allow him to get more reps over David Mayo with the first team, because we already know with David Mayo, that's going to be one of the biggest problems I have with this coaching staff, is that we already know who David Mayo is. How much better is he going to get with increased reps versus a Jamin Davis, how much he can get better with more reps? I just don't see what we're doing. We're not playing for wins and losses in training camp right now. Put Jamin Davis out there, and if he sucks, he sucks, but just let him get better. David Mayo isn't going to improve any amount enough for me to feel comfortable with him starting for us no matter what's going on. Then you have Khalid Hudson, who's probably 4th as our linebackers right now, but I still don't trust him either. And then you have Nathan Gerry, who we just signed, and I think he probably will end up making the team one way or another. You have Trey Walker, who retired, then unretired, so I'm not sure about him either. You have Milo Eifler, who occasionally makes plays, we'll see, and Deshaun Harris as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we still end up signing another linebacker before the season starts. I honestly would. This group is a little ugly. Especially, again, I was more optimistic about Jamin Davis before training camp, and even though he's been making good plays, the fact that they have David Mayo starting over him at times is like, what are we doing? Even if Jamin Davis is ready to take that next leap, why are y'all not propelling him to do that? Ron Rivera and Cole Holcomb have spoken so highly of him, but why is it not showing in the snap count? And then cornerback wise, Kendall Fuller, William Jackson III, and Benjamin St-Juste are your obvious top 3. I think Benjamin St-Juste will start in the slot more often than people probably think, and basically take the place of what I think we're going to split up Buffalo nickel responsibilities. If we don't end up bringing back Landon Collins, which I hope we do, I want to bring him back, but if we don't, I think it's going to be a nice blend of Farrah Gardner at times. It's going to be Percy Butler possibly at times, but it's going to also be a lot of Benjamin St-Juste as that 5th defensive back, because we're rarely ever going to go out there with more than 2 linebackers. If anything, we're going to have 5 defensive linemen out there more than we have 3 linebackers. But for the most part, the majority of our defensive snaps will be having another defensive back out there. And between Derek Forrest, Percy Butler, and Benjamin St-Juste, I can see Benjamin St-Juste being out there the most. But we'll see. And then you also have Corn Elder, who apparently has been having a pretty good training camp. Danny Johnson's been having a pretty good training camp. I've heard from multiple reports that Josh Drayden has been shining more than Danny Johnson has. And Danny Johnson does not get the credit that he deserves. That winning streak that we had last year, really the second half of the season, we had to step up and start at slot safety for us. He played really well, honestly. So I think it's going to be hard for him not to make the team, even if guys like Josh Drayden are flashing more so far in the offseason, because we got to see what he can do in the regular season. We know what Danny Johnson can do in the regular season. And then you have Christian Holmes, the final pick of our draft this past draft, and I've been hearing really good things about him as well. And then you have Troy Apke, who's definitely going to make the roster because he's one of our best special teams guys, arguably the best gunner on our team, and he's one of the best gunners in the NFL. So he's making the roster as a corner. Then you have Channing Striblin and DeJuan Neal, both USFL guys. Channing Striblin, the one with the richer history, the guy that I feel like is more likely to make the team over DeJuan Neal, but who knows? And then we brought in Devontae Bowsby a few days ago, and he was already making plays. He had a strip force fumble against somebody, I think it was Jonathan Williams, in practice. So he's already making plays and trying to make his name known, even though we just signed him not even an entire week ago, I believe. And then safety wise, your starters are technically Bobby McCain, the free safety, Cameron Curl is strong safety, but y'all know how much I love Percy Butler, and ideally he will become our starting free safety and eventually start over Bobby McCain and eat into the snap slowly but surely, because when he's at his best, you could argue he's one of our best defenders on the field, especially in the secondary. He's our fastest secondary player. It's between him and William Jackson. Out of the safety group, he's easily our fastest player. I mean, Logan Paulson even said it. When he flashes brighter than anybody else in the secondary, honestly, especially out of the safety group. But a lot of those plays are few and far in between. He needs to become more consistent, but the athleticism, the ceiling, the potential, all of that is clearly there. And he's been making plays in the run game now, lately in practices. Oh man, it's about to be dangerous with Percy Butler, man, because one thing he definitely has is range and coverage ability. If he can be able to consistently stop the run like he's been doing the past couple of days of practice, it's scary hours for other teams, man. I'm telling y'all, Bobby McCain is scary hours for you. He's on your heels. And then Derek Forrest, I've been hearing nothing but great things in training camp. In OTAs and mandatory mini camps, it was kind of like he flashed here, then he had a really bad play here, then he flashed again, great play, then another bad play. So far in training camp, I've heard nothing but great reviews about Derek Forrest. And it's crazy. I mean, I've even heard from somebody, I forgot who it was, that said you could argue Derek Forrest has been one of the 10 best players in training camp, period. Defense, offense, whoever. So, I mean, I'm excited about him as a potential Buffalo nickel guy. Then Jeremy Reeves has even stepped up and made some plays in training camp, and he's had experience starting at free safety for us a couple of years ago. So it's gonna kind of be hard to cut him because he's a really good guy to have as like your third string free safety. He's probably better than some teams' second string free safeties out there. I don't love Jeremy Reeves maybe as much as a lot of fans do, but I can definitely admit that he's not bad as your third free safety. And then Farrah Gardner, I'm rooting for him to make the team. He was a linebacker in college, now he's a safety, so I'm assuming he's probably competing most for the Buffalo nickel spot, and it's definitely ugly for him because, again, Percy Butler and Derek Forrest are having great camps. So we'll see. And then you also have Steven Parker, who we just signed, and it's definitely looking ugly for him. I mean, now going through the depth chart, I think it's even uglier than I felt when I was talking about him earlier. It's really ugly. You already have guys that have been here, just got here probably even only a few days before him, and they're already making plays, so it's ugly, but we'll see. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And man, as always, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors. Name you see scrolling on the screen right now. I apologize for not being able to stream, I guess technically yesterday as in Sunday, but I got y'all this Tuesday at 6 p.m. so make sure y'all pull up. Catch y'all later. I'm out.